Assalamu alaikum, my name is Jonathan Butterworth and I live in Cambridge, and I've been an Ahmadi Muslim for 4 months and 5 days. No, 4 months and 9 days. An Ahmadi Muslim is a human being that loves God and loves humanity. I became an Ahmadi Muslim because I first came to God in April 2010. No, actually earlier, March 2010, after prayer, and I was previously agnostic and I didn't have any belief at that time. I didn't disbelieve, but I didn't believe either. And I started to ask myself questions about life. I was writing some poetry, bad poetry at the time. And in this poetry, then I would try to write poetry, but then I found that I couldn't write any poetry whatsoever because I didn't know the purpose of life and because I didn't know why I was here. So I would continually get stuck asking myself, well, why am I here? Why do I do this? Why do that? I couldn't make sense of anything or write any poetry because I didn't know why I was here. So I asked myself questions, and then some other things in my life happened where somebody passed away, someone in the family, and I was then asking questions about life and death, and also about emotion and refuge, and where do you take refuge when life is tough. And I realised that you can't take refuge in anything impermanent or anything transient, because that is, it disappears. It's like sand, it just goes, in your hands, it just goes. So you can't really seek refuge in food or in lattes or in your friends or in your family. You can love them, but they can't anchor you and be your refuge, because they themselves, just like me, will die and my atoms will go. So I realized that was there anything permanent in the world, anything deep and rooted that was beyond time and matter and space, anything beyond material? So I thought there was. I felt like there should be. So I investigated through prayer, and I prayed to God, who I didn't at that time know whether he existed or not. And after 7 days, I got a very, very strong reply. I was in a field outside my house in Cambridge, and I was walking my dog, and I was quite confused with what to do with my life at the time. Should I do a PhD? Should I try to set up an NGO? What should I do? And as I was walking, then I looked up at the stars, and there was an entire sky full of stars from horizon to horizon, absolutely painted across the sky, and the moon was full, or it was prominent, and I couldn't believe the sight that I'd seen. It was as if I'd never seen it before in my life. And from looking at it, then I immediately was forced down on my knees, and I started to pray about what on earth should I do in my life, what am I meant to be, what's my purpose, what should I do. And I came to a very strong conclusion that I should set up a human rights NGO. And then but as I was doing this, as I was praying, then I was crying intensely, and like I'd ever cried before, perhaps when I was a small child, but I can't remember it. And all the hairs on my arms and my legs and every part of me, even my forehead where there is no hair, felt as if it was buzzing with electricity, and I didn't have any idea what was going on, but it was overwhelming. And then I stopped praying and stood up and said, right, so I should set up an NGO. And then I walked home and then asked myself, and I sat down at this table in my living room, my dining room, I said, what was that? And the only conclusion I could come to was that was God. But not the only conclusion, the deep knowledge I had at that particular moment, absolute certainty that was God. For the first time in my life, I'd actually come into communion with God, and that just shook me to the core, and immense feeling of awe and just how small I am was how I felt. And so after I came to God, then I loved God very much, and but I didn't really have a lot of time for religion, because I thought it was all man-made, and I saw the division, and it was the opposite of what I saw with God, or what I felt with God, absolute completeness and unity. So I didn't want anything to do with religion. It was just I felt it was like a sad stain on God. So I ignored it for about 2 months. But then I realized that essentially the only reason I was doing the things I was doing, or able to commune with God, was because of the knowledge I'd been given by religion. I was praying 5 times a day. I was talking to God. I was fasting. I was doing, and even the knowledge of God himself was because of religion. So I thought, okay, maybe I have judged too quickly. So I thought I'd go back and started reading. And I missed out, actually, that the reason I started praying was because of seeking advice from different friends who all had religion. One of them was an Ahmadi Muslim, a good friend of mine called Kudzi. And Kudzi, like all the others, had given me books. He gave me several books written by the promised Messiah, may the peace of God be upon him. And this book was The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. And I read it and loved it and wanted it to be true. Really desired this truth. I desired one God, one humanity, one religion. And that religion can be translated into many different languages, but in its English form it would be peace, or submission to God, and in its Arabic form it would be Islam. And so it was an effort to move beyond what I saw in the world, and to just follow this message of this beautiful message that I found of complete unity. But I wanted it to be true, but I didn't know if it was true, because even though it chimed with my heart, I didn't know whether it was true. So I felt like I had to test it. So I spent a long time reading. I went to all the different scriptures. I read the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, the Taoist books, or one Taoist book, and then the Holy Quran as well. And when I was reading these, then as I went through, then I saw a complete unity and harmony with all of them. A central channel of unity. Lots of different little bits that go here and there about different practices and slightly different variations, but down the center was this complete idea of love of God and love of humanity. And from that, then I felt that I was no longer forced into this situation of having to be a Christian or a Catholic or a Jew or a Muslim, because in fact they were all one. Not necessarily the religion now as practiced, but their messengers, and that's who I wanted, because I wanted God. And if God had sent them, then I wanted them. And so as I went through these different books, then I was praying all the way through, and I was able to accept the prophets as I went through, peace be upon them. And one by one I took on each prophet. At each stage, reading in the books, essentially, that they would say, these messengers, that we have come and we are from one God, and we are telling you to believe, but will you believe in us, or will you believe in what your forefathers have told you? And so for me, I couldn't stop with Abraham, and I couldn't stop with Moses, I couldn't stop with Jesus, and I had to have Muhammad as well. May the peace and blessings of God be upon him. And then when I came to Muhammad, then I faced a real crunch time, because it's very easy to accept a prophet from the ancient times, but to accept a prophet from now, from modern times, is a huge test of faith, because it is to say that God is not only an ancient God that existed previously, but a God that is here and now and is almighty and providing miracles to us at this present day. And that's a test of faith, a huge test of faith, because to believe in prophecy in this day and age is not common. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had to essentially investigate, so I kept going, and I read several books. By the grace of God, I read several books of the promised Messiah, of his work, alayhi salam. And it was about 1.5 years during this process, and over this process I'd prayed continually, and I'd accepted various prophets, and it was coming to a head at about a year and just approaching Jalsa Salana of 2011. And as I was coming to Jalsa Salana, I'd had several dreams, and it made complete sense in my mind, complete rational sense. But I was waiting for God to do what he had done to me the first night I came to him in the field. I was waiting for him to break my heart and for him to compel me to embrace his messenger. And I was scared about embracing any messenger without God's blessing, because I want to do for him. He's mine. There's no safety without him. And so I was praying hard, and I was like, what am I going to do here? Are you going to show me? Or because if you don't, then I can't do it. But it was about half an hour before the international Bayat, and I took a small book which I'd been given the earlier day by a friend of mine called Kudzi again, and I'd started reading it the night before, and it's called Our Teaching. And half an hour before the international Bayat, which is the process of devoting yourself to God through his messengers, in particular his most recent, the promised Messiah, may the peace of God be upon him. And in the final paragraph, I took the book and I went to the corner of the perimeter fence of Jalsa and sat and prayed, and then started to read. And I read the end of this book, and as I got to the final paragraph, I read this paragraph, and this line said, "Now is the time to strive in the cause of the religion which you claim to profess." And when I read this, then I realized that if I want God, then I need to live for God and give myself to God, not just through my words and through paying lip service to God, but to genuinely treat him as the Almighty God, and to give full respect and devotion to him. And if he has sent me a messenger, then I can't simply ignore, and I can't simply say I'm a Muslim but then reject the prophecies of the Holy Prophet, may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, which tell me that when his Messiah comes, that I need to cross mountains of ice on my knees to give him my salams, and that there is no safety and security in Islam at the time of the Messiah unless I embrace this Messiah. So I went back into the hall and I took my bayat. I said to God that I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it for you, and there's no other security and no other safety I have here, so I need you to honour my promise to you and forgive me if I'm doing it for anything else. Please don't let me, but I'm doing it for you. And I took my bayat, and as soon as I did, then he broke my heart, and I knew he was right. He made me cry like a little baby. So, and that was confirmation, complete confirmation in my heart at that very moment that I gave myself to God, that he confirmed my choice and showed me that what I'd done was right. Islam has changed my life by giving me my identity back, by making me, for the brief times that God accepts my prayers and lets me come to him, and the times in which he gives me the grace to properly remember him and love him as he should be loved, then are those moments that I am myself, and I am the person that I was made to be, and it has brought me truth of the world, but the truth of my own heart, and the ability to be true to myself again.